can have diversity. But that doesn't necessarily create inclusion. In inclusion, we're talking about a two-way, person-to-person interaction, where people feel safe to bring themselves, and they're also heard. Their thoughts are considered as a part of the whole. When my mom immigrated from India, it was about 15 years after a key immigration act. There was a time in the US where there was a cap on how many people could enter the US from India. Well, that cap had been lifted, and 15 years in, my mom had moved here, and she started working. So she was not alone in her workplace. There was growing diversity, but every single day, she would eat lunch by herself. Why would she do that? Well, she would bring Indian food, and she would notice people's faces change, right? She had little containers, and she thought that people would think it's kind of weird. Because in those days, in the 80s and the 70s, it was in the 80s. In the 80s, the goal was to blend in. And if you couldn't blend in, you stood on your own. So she would eat in her cube by herself every single day. And even to this day, she still feels a little bit awkward. Even when people have had Indian food, it exists, it's out here in the world, right? She still feels awkward. So those workplaces that she was initially introduced to, they might have had diversity, but they didn't have inclusion. And it just makes you wonder, what else was she holding back that could have created that creativity we're talking about? How many of you have ever been in a room where you feel like you're with your best friends and you can say what you want to say and it's okay? It's a very positive feeling when you truly belong somewhere. So imagine now when we're training people like, wow, you have these unconscious biases, you suddenly get this anxiety. I know I've got these biases, and I don't want to offend that person. I don't want to be really sensitive, and I don't know if I'm saying the right thing right now. Am I offending them? Oh, wow. Is that going to get you to the positive place you're trying to go? You're terrified. So really thinking about adding to that approach with the power of our strengths, how inclusion might look a little bit different. I believe that we all have the power to include. I believe we all have the power to include. And I've experienced it, just like we have the power to exclude. So how do you treat someone who belongs around you? One of the first things is looking people in the eye. You would think this is basic body language, looking people in the eye. But guess what? When we see someone that we're a little uncomfortable around, we get a little, or we think we might disagree with. That's often when it comes up. When we think we might disagree with someone, we suddenly start looking everywhere but them. Like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to express this unpopular opinion right now. But when you look someone in the eye, you extend a little bit of trust. You extend the idea that, okay, I don't know if what I'm saying is landing with you, but that's okay. I'm comfortable. I'm okay seeing where this will play out. And I'm comfortable with you saying something, and I'm willing to let that play out.